Off the road here, we have a pair of jackrabbits that are just kind of crisscrossing in front of us. See how long we can get video of them as we move along here. In Colorado, there are, depending on who you talk to, between 3 and 5 different species of tarantula, all in the genus Aphonopelma. I am amazed that we have actually found 2 on this trip. Hey all, Huck and Carlton with Carlton Carnivores here. We are down in southeast Colorado for the second time this year. Hoping to find some new things while road cruising, checking out some of the canyons that are down on the south border. Possibly visit the 3 corners where Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado all meet. If we're lucky, find some reptiles that I have not seen before down there. And hopefully we'll get lucky tonight with cruising, and also tomorrow, our second night. We'll see what shows up. Got a little blue damselfly here, who won't stay still long enough for a decent video. There's quite a few of these guys around Lake Hasty down here. All of the gray ones were busy when we were here last, but got the blues moving around right now. There's actually a couple of them. Just over by the weeds by the grate here. The campfire grate. From where I live, the southeast is a several-hour drive, but even if you go down there and don't find any reptiles at all, it's still worth it just to see the landscapes that are down there, as well as the other animals that you can sometimes come across. Get out here, this is one of the biggest grasshoppers I think I've ever seen. And he's leaving a present for us. At the moment there. These really interesting stripes down his back. Bright green color. Toad at first because he's so huge. He's making poops as big as a toad too. My goodness. And we have here, hidden in the bushes, very elusive luminous cats. More commonly seen near heavily populated areas, but occasionally makes it out along these lesser traveled dirt roads as well. Some sort of weevil species out here feeding on the plants. I think this is the first time I've actually seen one, and this is quite a large one too. Sadly, the first snake we found was not alive, but it didn't take long after that before other more interesting living things decided to pop up. Alright, so we've been driving all night, and unfortunately haven't found any live reptiles, but we have found our first tarantula down here. So in Colorado, there are, depending on who you talk to, between 3 and 5 different species of tarantula, all in the genus Aphonopelma. The ones down here, if we consider them all the same species, are the Oklahoma brown tarantula. They're just starting to reach the point where the males are going to start coming out and looking for females. Males tend to have much longer legs than females do. Females tend to just stay in their burrow. They'll travel short distances if they need to find more food, but otherwise they just kind of stay put. The males travel all throughout late summer and fall, either finding females or they'll end up getting killed off by the cold. They typically take between 7 and 12 years to reach maturity. The females tend to take longer than the males do. And just because he's out and about, I'm going to guess this is probably a male. So we'll scoot him off the road, and hopefully before the night's over, maybe find a reptile or 2 that's still alive. And so we just turned around, and as it turns out, that tarantula may no longer be, moving around on its own power anymore, as we have a tarantula hawk here who is digging out a hole. So more than likely, that tarantula, which is right over there, has probably been stung and immobilized. We'll test and see in a second here. And is going to become food for the larva for the tarantula hawk wasp. Now this is one insect you definitely don't want to piss off. They're generally fairly calm animals. They don't really bother people. They're not easy to get to sting. But if you do get stung by one, they rank one of the worst on the pain scale among insect stings. So no reptiles yet, but after unfortunately hitting a Woodhouse's toad, we have found a baby. I think this is a Great Plains spadefoot. I will double check on the guide in a little bit here, and we'll get some photos of him. These guys are adorable. They're coming out. This guy was probably metamorphosed earlier this year from the early summer rains. They're coming back out right now because of some late summer rains that have come through recently. So we'll get a couple photos and then get him off the road here. And indeed, this is the plains spadefoot, Spia bombifrons. These guys differ from the somewhat rarer New Mexican spadefoot, which I am still looking for, in that they have a rather prominent bump or a boss that's kind of triangular shape that sits right between the eyes on the head. This time, a live young Woodhouse's toad. So luckily we'll get him off the road without getting him squished. Come on, dude. Here we go. Off you go. Yep. All right. We've got our first snake of the night. Temperatures are just dropping down, so we got really lucky that we got this one crossing. This is my second ever live Texas longnose snake, Rhinocylus lecontii. These guys are one of the infamous red, black, and white snakes. This is kind of one of those that breaks the rule of red touch yellow, kill a fellow, because as you can see if you look closely, he's got a little bit of red that is coming in on the bands between the black, and it's touching the lighter colors. So this guy is one of those several that breaks the rules. And so southeastern Colorado here is one of the only places where you will find this species in Colorado. They are fairly common as you move further south and to the southwest. And these guys, they're entirely non-venomous. They're generally lizard specialists, although large ones will also take small rodents. And he's got these beautiful red eyes, if you can see them there.
Yeah, I got the red in there now.
Nice. So, these guys are not commonly seen down here in Colorado either. So, finding one just kind of cruising the road, and we almost passed him too. We got really lucky. So, we'll get a few photos of him, and then we'll release him off the road here in the direction he was heading. It's thought that the populations of the long-nosed snake in southeastern Colorado are fairly localized and rather uncommon. In some spots they can become rather densely populated, but overall it's really uncommon to see these guys, and finding even one or two on any trip is a really lucky thing. The Texas long-nosed snake is found across from Colorado south, of course, through New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. Off to the west, it is replaced by the nominate subspecies, and this subspecies can be differentiated from the other one, and as well as other species in the genus, by having a notably upturned snout and a fairly large rostral scale on the tip of that snout. These guys are fairly variable in color. Sometimes they will have no red whatsoever and just have very distinct black and white bands. Other times that red can be really, really rich and very bright, almost scarlet, or in some cases even pink. And here he is, letting him off into the bush. He'll go and he'll disappear into the brush, hunting little lizards. We have out off the side of the road here a pair of skunks. Can't really see them very well. We're not going to get too close, of course.
Tails are at us.
Do their thing.
Thought they're moving.
Wandering off into the bushes. There they go.
Huh.
The best find of maybe the whole weekend, though, was this. Alright. Our second snake of the night, and this is something I almost really didn't expect to see at all. Something that I've been hoping to look for a long time. This is a lifer for me. This is Tantilla nigriceps, the plains black-headed snake. They are a primarily burrowing species. They eat generally invertebrates, small insects, and of course, as you can see on that head, why they're called black-headed snakes. This is a full-size snake. They don't get much bigger than this. So they're often mistaken for worms by a lot of people. And so these guys are typically most often active after rains. Otherwise, they are usually burrowing deep under the soil. So the rains from the cold front that went through yesterday are probably would have brought this guy out, and just barely saw him moving on the road too. And I can feel he may have had a couple of things take a go at him, because he's got a couple of kinks in his spine where things might have bitten at him, and he's gotten away. So this is a lucky animal. He's also got a couple of little missing scales on the side, another sign that he is a survivor. So we'll get a couple of photos and then we'll let him on his way. The genus Tantilla is found throughout much of the New World. Up to 65 or more species are currently described, and some of them range anywhere from little guys like this species to up to 2 feet long or so. Some species, particularly from South America, are coral snake mimics, and all of them are either fossorial or semi-fossorial. They tend to be burrowing, or they hide under leaf litter and debris. They really like to eat things like ant larvae or centipedes, as many of the other species are actually referred to specifically as centipede snakes. And in the U.S., some of these species are referred to either as black-headed snakes, crown snakes. Some of them, like in Florida, are very endemic species found in only very small locations. And this species, you can tell it apart from some of its close relatives that it encounters, like the Chihuahua and the Yaqui or Hobart Smith's black-headed snakes, by the number of black scales that continue out onto the neck behind the head, whether or not they have a collar, a white collar behind the black head. This species does not, as well as looking at some of the minute details like shape and location of the scales on the head. So we're letting him go now. He'll go right off into the grass. And as we release him, if you listen in the background, you might hear the coyotes howling in the distance. So, there he is. There he goes. And if you listen in the background, we've got coyotes all around us here, out in the distance. A couple of different packs, because I'm hearing them in at least 2 different directions. Very cool finish for the night, potentially. We'll see if we find anything else, but this might well be the wrap-up. Hey, also, it's the second morning now. Last night, of course, as you guys all know, we had a couple snakes finish out the night right at the end. Today we are hopefully going to head down to a couple of canyons right on the border of Colorado and hopefully find a few other species. I'm really hoping for thread snakes or ringnecks maybe, night snakes perhaps. Really hoping for a Great Plains rat snake somewhere. And then later tonight we'll be cruising again. It's going to be warmer today, so hopefully we'll be able to cruise for longer, get some more things out. We'll see what comes. One of our only native melons in Colorado is coyote melon. This one happens to be growing right in the middle of our campground here. No fruits on it, it's nowhere near big enough yet, but give it another month or so it might. For our second day, we headed right down to the border of Colorado, a region where it truly is a land of extremes in terms of the landscape and environments you can see. While much of the southeast is flat, rolling grassland, this is an area where you can be driving along and see nothing but grass and the cholla cactuses that are everywhere. And this moment that you crest over the next hill, you might just be in Pinyon Juniper Canyon land and be right on the edge of steep cliffs. Some more of those giant grasshoppers that were literally everywhere down there. I imagine take 2 of these, fry them up, you'd have a meal for somebody. They come in a huge number of colors. There were greens, pinks, oranges, kind of yellowish, black, as well as some rather odd really large, pinkish, slender grasshoppers down there too. here at our next spot. Once again, the rare and elusive Illuminous canis has shown up again. Shameful how people can't pick up after themselves. And because it turned out to be a rather huge, noticeable problem while we were down there, I'm going to take just a minute to remind everyone, if you go out and visit these natural environments and you make any sort of trash, please take it with you. Don't be like the group that I spotted in the second canyon, camping illegally, leaving trash, crap, and toilet paper everywhere, as well as a few other questionable things. Please, respect our natural environments, especially places with historic significance as well, like these canyons where there are all sorts of different carvings and hieroglyphics around. We got one of the Scoloporus lizards on the rock here. I'm not great at identifying the different species, so I can't really tell from this distance. Fair chance, like the other couple that we've seen, he'll disappear the moment I move closer, but we'll see. And no surprise, as seen in the previous photo with me missing the lizard, I did not catch him, but my mother was able to get a actually pretty decent photo of the guy. Now, supposedly there's really only one species of Scoloporus out here, the prairie lizard, Scoloporus consabrinus, though the pattern of this particular one really does not match what they supposedly should have in this area. Whatever these lizards are, they're all fairly similar, the prairie, plateau, fence lizards, and so on, and they often play the same role in the environment, so one is very similar to the next. Amongst all of the unfortunately more recent carvings that we won't look at, we have some actual hieroglyphics on the canyon walls here. This particular canyon is actually full of hieroglyphics and other interesting artifacts like dinosaur prints. Got right in the center there, leopard frog. Can't tell from this distance if it's a northern or plains, but down here I think they're all plains. Threatened in Colorado. It's one of the last major strongholds of them down in the southeast corner. There's actually quite a few in around the pools that are down in this canyon. And a plant that I was not expecting at all to see down here, but there were quite a few all around the pools. This is the scarlet lobelia. And I've grown a couple of these guys before. They didn't last for me, unfortunately, but they're often grown as a carnivorous plant companion or just kind of a wet soil or bog plant. I'll have to look in to see if they're actually native to this area or not, but in any case, quite a beautiful surprise. Alright, first new herp of the day, and he's probably going to try and escape as soon as I open my hand, so I've got the video. Yep, there he is. There he is. Gastrophren olivaceus, the western narrow-mouthed toad. They are only found in this extreme southeastern corner of Colorado, and quite different from any of the other amphibians that you'll find in this area as well. Get him. Onto the side here. Try and get a good look at his face. Here he is. See all the little spots on his back. He was buried in a piece of rotting wood. Alright, so we'll get him put back in a little bit here. Gastrophren, or gastrophony, depending on who you talk to, olivacea, the western narrow-mouthed toad, is of course not actually a toad. They're referred to as such oftentimes because they are a primarily terrestrial species, but they are part of the Microhylidae frog family, and the only representative of such in Colorado. And these guys, as I said in the previous little video, are only found along the very southern border of Colorado, right where New Mexico and Oklahoma kind of meet. These guys have a really, really loud, kind of a harsh buzzing call when they are breeding, and throughout most of the year they can be found in moist leaf litter or logs, almost never actually in water. Got ourselves a little canyon wren up in this crack here. crawling away. Oh, where'd he go? There he is. Sitting on the rock wall and disappearing in the back. So after overshooting our shot a little bit, turns out this is what the far west handle of Oklahoma looks like. Not the flat we're used to. So after a short jaunt of being a little lost over in the Oklahoma Panhandle, we have finally found the monument. I am standing in Colorado, Oklahoma, and New Mexico all at once. And this is quite the landscape out here too. This whole area is just canyons and buttes and plateaus. And it's not surprising why, depending on what map you listen to, some believe that this might be an area where the western diamondback rattlesnake might just cross into Colorado. Long shot that we would see one, but we'll keep an eye out. Alright, so we're at the second canyon now, taking a break for lunch, and then we'll be heading down for a short little bit. No snakes at the first canyon, unfortunately, but I'm holding out hope that hopefully down in there, it's quite a deep canyon actually, there will be some more permanent pools of water, and hoping maybe we'll find some blackneck garter snakes, line snakes, ring necks would be really nice. So we'll wait and see, and if not, well, we still got road cruising tonight. Sadly, there would be no snakes to be found here either, but this second canyon was nonetheless a beautiful place to visit. A deeper canyon than the first one, as well as it hosted far more permanent pools of water in which there were a number of fish that could be spotted. Not sure what species, some sort of sunfish I think, but if the pools are around long enough to support those guys, they're certainly around long enough to support all the different species of snake I mentioned, the garter snakes and line snakes, so another trip maybe we'll find them. We did see blazing stars and dragonflies flying around before moving out, heading off to go road cruise and seeing some turkeys along the way. Down in the canyon lands, listening to the cicadas all around. Got wild turkeys crossing the road here. Quite a few of them actually. Let's see if they'll all go across. 5 or 6. There they go. Wandering about in the bush. Got them again, yep. Turkey run number 2. Or round 2. All sorts of them. There are dozens down here apparently. Alright, we've finally found on day 2 our first snake of the day, and it is a young prairie rattlesnake, Crotalus viridis. He's out, looks like just cruising because he's not flattening against the road to soak up the heat. You can see his tongue flaring out there, trying to catch as much scent as possible as he holds it out. And as I walk up on him to move him along, you'll probably see him react. So, hey you. Yep, there he goes. Into the classic S position. He's actually up off the road, which I don't usually see with the prairie. He's a beautiful one too. So these guys are one of the most widespread rattlesnakes in the U.S., ranging from Canada down to Mexico, and from the edge of the Great Plains in the east all the way across to across several parts of the Rocky Mountains, where they meet up against their closest relatives, the Great Basin and midget faded rattlesnakes, among others. They were all once considered to be the same species, but now most of these different subspecies have been actually separated into their own unique species. So Crotalus viridis no longer has any subspecies of its own. It's just considered its own thing. So we will get him off the road after we get a couple of photos here. We will put him. Hey dude, you're okay. Yeah, see? Oh, come on. I know. Okay. Just gonna kind of scoot you along here. You don't stay on the hook, do ya? Yeah, we'll just get you scooting along. Come on. Maybe if I can tail in here.
Ah, Hawkin.
We're okay here. While he is on the hook, I actually have a decent means of moving him along here. And there he goes. There. And I'm going to reiterate here, unless you are a professional who knows exactly what they are doing, do not try to tail a rattlesnake. The smaller the animal, the harder it is to, and unless you know exactly how to read their body language, you are very likely to mess up. Even I, though I know how to do it, still prefer to just use the hook where I can. If the animal is uncooperative, I may briefly tail just to get them off the road, but otherwise I prefer not to get my hands on the snake whatsoever. To just use the hook as the safest method and move them off. If you are not familiar with reptiles, do not try to touch them in any manner. This beautiful snake too was on the lower limit of the size where I would even try to do such a thing. And generally, it's best to simply watch from a distance if you have that option. Off the road here we have a pair of jackrabbits that are just kind of crisscrossing in front of us. See how long we can get video of them as we move along here. Oh, there he goes. Just back and forth, okay. Gonna guess it's a female that wants nothing to do with the male. And there they go. And we have here another pair. One just ran off that way. And then there's this guy, they're feeding off the side of the road. We've got a second prairie rattlesnake out here. Don't go just yet, dude. It's a big adult. And he was actually heading that way, so we'll see if we can convince him to go back the direction he was going. Let's get him stopped here. It's a pretty good size, might be about 3.5 feet long. They'll get up to about 5 feet, but this is about average. So we'll get him moving. He's actually hissing right now more than he is rattling. As soon as anything moves, he might start rattling again, though. And this is a great example of how personalities differ in snakes just like they do people. Unlike the previous rattlesnake, which was pretty ready to react to our presence and moderately cantankerous, this one was actually fairly laid back and placid. Just kind of wanted to check things out. And in fact, in the second photo here, you can see he's actually stretching up to just smell the hook, which I'm sure smelled like the other snake. So he's just trying to figure out, what is this thing, before moving on. Alright, we've got a second long-nosed snake, Ranochyllus ocontii, and this one is so much more red than the other one. He has got some absolutely gorgeous bands here. I am amazed that we have actually found two on this trip. So, these are both really young. They might have been from last year's clutch, actually. They'll usually get to about 3 feet long, usually, maybe a little bigger. So these guys are still really young. So we'll get a couple pictures and then get them off the road again. Alright, he goes off the bush. Goes here in the grass. And off he goes. Yep, a much more beautiful specimen, at least in my opinion, than the previous one we saw, and at first what we thought might be a pretty decent wrap-up for the night. But as it would turn out, there were just a few more things that we would see before the night actually wrapped up. Just down the road, we have finally found a tarantula that has not been stung by the tarantula hawks. One of the Aphomopelma, fully alive. I'll get him to not go towards the road here. They react see, he's not happy with me poking him. No, go this way. You should go, that's better, yes. Go this direction. Come on. No, go this way. They rather have a rather set mind for where they want to go. And he was in that direction earlier. Hopefully he does not make his way up onto the road. This is almost certainly a male. So keep an eye on him, hopefully keep him from getting squished. Alright, we've got our third rattlesnake for the night. I'm going to hand the phone off so I can deal with it. And he'll come back this way, so we'll just let him decide where he should go. Yep, there we go. Off he goes. And away he goes. You could hear his rattle kind of puttering off into the bushes for quite a ways after that too, because it's not actually something that is like a live self-moving structure. The rattles are simply interconnected pieces of keratin, so if they're bumping against things as the snake is moving off, then they'll make noise just as much as if the rattlesnake is actually rattling their tail. Shortly after that, we found a small caterpillar that was crossing the road. Actually not small, this was a large, I think it's a hornworm. These guys will probably turn into hawk moths. And then after this, a couple of mammals that actually finished out our night. We've got a coyote out on the road here. He's running. Let's see which way he goes here. There he goes off the road. Badger across the road here. Going into the campground. Alright, so last night finished out with coyotes and badgers. Did not find any other snakes, unfortunately, after that last rattler, but just means we've got another excuse to come down this way again sometime. We did sadly miss what I think was a Great Plains rat snake, so all the more incentive. And I'm thinking next time maybe take a trip into the actual panhandle of Oklahoma where things become a little more common. Find either a campsite or a hotel there maybe. Anyway, until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel here. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them down below or contact me at the website, carltoncarnivores.com. And if you guys would like to see more content like this, maybe more frequently, remember, these sorts of endeavors are time-consuming and expensive, so all the support I can get, I can use. So if you would like to become a supporter at our Patreon page, the link will be down below in the description. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Carlton Carnivores. And until next time, I'm Hawk and Carlton at Carlton Carnivores.